Those tormentors spared no effort in making the frail girl's existence pure misery. The wretched girl slumped on the frozen pavement while her peers encircled her, sneering. They smashed runny eggs over her head, observing the yellow liquid flow down her shaking face, then ripped apart sacks of baking powder, showering her completely. Despite the constant degradation, she offered zero opposition. This boosted the tormentors' spirits as they drizzled smelly shrimp paste over her, turning her into what they sneeringly named their walking party treat, to honor their chief tormentor's special occasion. The ill-fated girl's given name was Bethany. She had a sibling named Coralia, and although they had the same looks, their ways were polar opposites. Growing up without anyone, the two of them had been put into different places following their birth. Coralia had been fortunate, being taken in by a rich family residing in the major city of Brightwater, whereas Bethany suffered a childhood with constant difficulty at Dewdrop Orphanage. She had to become mature quickly, taking care of the younger ones, while barely being past infancy. Because of her tough beginnings, Bethany's character became shy and closed off, making her an easy target for schoolyard tormentors. Meanwhile, her sibling Coralia had lived a charmed life, but grew up cold and detached. Because she was consistently coddled by her adoptive mother, who arranged everything on her behalf, Coralia grew ruthless and uncaring of others' pain. On that particular day, Coralia was on a class outdoor trip, hiking across lovely mountain trails while viewing a live broadcast of her closest friend's gymnastics event. Seeing her friend get the top score, Coralia couldn't contain her delight and shouted loudly, causing amused glances from others. In obvious contrast, Bethany was enduring another round of ongoing abuse. Today was their chief tormentor's anniversary, and her followers had decided to transform Bethany into a walking, talking treat. They brutally broke eggs onto her head, covered her with baking powder, and poured her with overpowering shrimp paste. Looking at Bethany's pitiable condition, the school head tormentor, Priscilla, stood silently as if she might feel sympathy. But after a few moments, she burst into wild laughter and made exaggerated hand gestures to thank her partners. The ordeal didn't cease there. Bethany was made to change into exercise clothing, reeking of shrimp paste, and step into the classroom where not a single person showed pity. Instead, they covered their noses drastically because of the lingering odor. Even her seat partner instructed Bethany to keep away, as if her fate could be spread. To make matters worse, after class, the mentor, Ms. Alder, called her aside for a private word. She criticized Bethany's state, saying her clothes were unclean and she sent out an awful scent. Throughout the school, she heard only mocking remarks and rude statements. The following day, Bethany fell unwell and remained home. As soon as she went beyond the orphanage building for fresh air, she noticed the familiar crew of tormentors getting closer. They were claiming to be doing volunteer service as a reason to visit the children's house, but actually they searched for another time to bully Bethany. Still feeling weak, Bethany endured their presence quietly, not needing to cause issues for Mrs. Daisy, the center's supervisor. The scenario was made more complex by Priscilla's father, Mr. Hawthorne, being a big benefactor of the charity house, leaving Bethany no option but to endure what was coming her way. Priscilla frequently boasted of her father's scholarship money and how he constantly looked for places to support. Hearing this and determined to better things for the welfare center, Bethany arranged to talk with Priscilla privately that evening. She humbly begged Priscilla to say good things to her father, hoping for bigger funds. However, Bethany had been much too innocent. Priscilla used the excuse of borrowing Bethany's gadget to supposedly ask her father's thought about funding. However, she truly sent mocking messages to the entire group chat of tormentors, further inflaming their hatred towards Bethany. When both sides noticed the deception, a violent argument began. During the fight, Priscilla tumbled backwards into sharp metal bars. Bethany, despite everything Priscilla had done, instinctively shielded her tormentor with her own body, thinking this act might change Priscilla's heart. Instead, Priscilla relied on her parents' power to pressure the school into kicking out Bethany, realizing Bethany couldn't fight against such affluent, connected rivals. Not able to win against the Hawthorne family's power, Bethany begged Ms. Alder to attend just one last class before her unavoidable expulsion. However, when she got back to the classroom for her final day, the tormentors waited with an even more detailed scheme. They had written hateful phrases all over her desk and trapped her, wanting to tear her clothes and document the attack. Thankfully, Bethany summoned every bit of strength to push them away and flee. She stumbled desperately across the schoolyard, the mental strain finally causing her moves to become clouded and illogical. Meanwhile, Coralia had just climbed out of her family's luxury car when she got a strange message from an unknown sender. Her feelings turned bitter upon reading it, and the costly gadget fell from her shaking hands. When she got back into the car, she showed obvious annoyance towards her closest friend, completely strange for her often calm demeanor. That evening, while relaxing in her family's mansion's classy living room, Coralia suddenly received an urgent phone call. After grabbing her gadget and hurrying out, her closest friend, Laurel, became worried and followed quietly. Laurel saw Coralia meeting with some strange person in a heated discussion before storming off frustrated. The following day, Coralia's class took a beautiful aerial tram to the mountain for their yearly school outing. Coralia's face carried sadness she couldn't hide. Despite their long separation, she still thought of Bethany clearly, though they had never truly met as young women. Ironically, they both were in the same mountain cafe at one point, but the sisters passed by each other without knowing their connection. When it was time for the class photo at the beautiful viewpoint, everyone panicked when they couldn't find Coralia anywhere. The entire class immediately rushed to search the mountain trails, but even after scouring nearly every accessible place, they couldn't find her. News of Coralia's strange disappearance quickly reached her adoptive mother through worried school calls. Mrs. Beaufort rushed to the mountain, completely crushed with sadness and not able to speak clearly through her cries. Meanwhile, Coralia's best friend and secret admirer, Milo, couldn't hide his intense anxiety upon hearing she was gone. Thinking constantly about Coralia's safety, he lost focus completely and missed his important gymnastics event, something he had practiced for all year. Not able to accept the devastating fact, Mrs. Beaufort searched constantly for news of her cherished daughter, hiring private detectives and arranging volunteer search teams. Then one day, after weeks of awful doubt, she got a long-awaited call from Brightwater Main Hospital. At last, her days of crushing worry seemed to be ending. But the relief was heartbreakingly brief, as Mrs. Beaufort soon got awful news. Her daughter had suffered severe memory problems because of mental shock and extreme stress. The doctors explained she might eventually get back her memories, or she could permanently forget everything about her previous life, including her own identity. As Coralia prepared to leave the hospital in a wheelchair, still weak and disoriented, she met Priscilla by pure chance in the hospital corridor. Mistaking Coralia for Bethany because of their identical looks, Priscilla immediately began her usual bullying, not knowing her mistake. Mrs. Beaufort appeared just in time to pull Priscilla away from her confused daughter. Only then did Priscilla realize she had mistaken the person completely. She quickly mumbled an embarrassed apology and ran off down the hospital hallway in obvious humiliation. At the same time, Milo still didn't know that Coralia had been found safe. He sat alone in his empty house, staring at old pictures and remembering that emotional evening years ago when he had made a solemn vow. To fulfill that childhood vow of winning a national gold medal and giving it to Coralia as a symbol of his love, he had practiced hard for years. He rushed to her hospital bed as soon as he got his medal, but contrary to Milo's heartfelt expectations, Coralia treated him with complete cold indifference. She claimed she didn't think of him at all and didn't care about any vows from their shared past. Those cruel phrases deeply hurt Milo's loyal heart. Suddenly, he noticed a new mark on Coralia's neck that hadn't been there before her disappearance. Curious and concerned, Milo gently asked what had happened to cause such an injury. Upon hearing his question, Coralia instinctively stepped back and told him coldly that he couldn't possibly help her with anything important. Milo still couldn't understand why Coralia had changed so drastically from the warm, caring person he remembered. After getting wonderful news that Coralia had returned safely, Milo hurriedly rushed to the hospital place. However, Coralia, having lost all her precious memories, couldn't think of him at all when they stood together in the same elevator. It was as if they were complete strangers who had never shared years of friendship. Milo painfully remembered the exact phrases Coralia had spoken that evening before her disappearance. Initially thinking she was just teasing him playfully as she often did, he had rushed over and hugged her tightly with relief. But after learning the shocking truth about her memory loss, Milo was absolutely devastated to discover she had forgotten their entire relationship. When Coralia asked him directly if they had been close friends, both Milo and Laurel bolted out of the hospital room, not able to bear seeing her confusion. Mrs. Beaufort desperately wanted her daughter to get back her lost memories as quickly as possible, so she brought Coralia back to their family home. Together, they spent hours looking through old photo albums, trying to cause some memory. Coralia wondered loudly why there were no pictures of her as a young child in any of the family albums. Her mother then gently explained that Coralia had been found abandoned in a potato field at age 5, with no memory of her life before that awful discovery. Before Coralia could process this shocking revelation further, her mother insisted she needed to return to school immediately to resume her normal routine. At school, Coralia met a friendly girl from the hospital who had also been recovering from an accident. The entire class was absolutely shocked to see the dramatic change in their former classmate. The old Coralia had been so tough, rebellious and intimidating, but now she appeared as shy as a frightened mouse. Previously, she had never bothered greeting anyone politely, but her complete transformation left everyone in shock. Seeing that she had lost her memory, some of Coralia's well-meaning classmates tried to help her recover by taking her to a popular singing session. However, since none had brought enough money to pay for the private room, the entire group ended up being escorted to the local police station. Too scared and embarrassed to call their parents for help, they had no option but to contact their mentor, Mr. Indigo, to rescue them. However, the mentor's modest salary wasn't nearly enough to cover the expensive bill, and when he saw the total amount owed, Mr. Indigo was utterly stunned. He desperately asked the singing owner if he could pay part immediately and arrange monthly installments for the rest. While waiting for the late-night bus to take them home, Coralia was delighted to discover she had someone heading in the same direction as her house. But their relationship wasn't nearly as friendly as she optimistically thought. Before she had lost her memory, their connection had been quite complicated and often antagonistic. The following morning, without needing any alarm clock, Coralia naturally woke up on her own at exactly 5 o'clock. Seeing it was still early and feeling unusually energetic, she decided to take her bicycle out for some morning exercise around the neighborhood. Unexpectedly, she ran into Milo at the front gate, who was also heading out for his daily workout routine. So the two ended up exercising together, creating an awkward but pleasant morning routine. When she arrived at school later, Coralia tried repeatedly to open her personal locker, but after more than 200 frustrated attempts, she still couldn't remember the correct combination and gave up in complete frustration. Suddenly, Coralia realized that her new friend, who had gone singing with her the previous night, hadn't been attending school for several consecutive days. Before she could even sit down at her desk to start the day, that same friend walked nervously into the classroom alongside Mr. Indigo. The mentor asked Coralia directly to unlock her locker so they could investigate some missing items. When she explained honestly that she couldn't remember the password because of her amnesia, the mentor instructed the class leader to bring a heavy hammer from the maintenance closet. But Coralia's friend, a boy named Jasper, quickly grabbed a metal chair and smashed the locker door open with surprising force. When the dented door finally swung open, all that was visible inside was a single strange box containing what appeared to be an extremely expensive diamond necklace. A girl named Sierra immediately spoke up, claiming loudly that the necklace belonged to her mother and had been stolen from their family home. Instantly, all eyes in the classroom turned toward Coralia, but she genuinely couldn't remember anything about the jewelry or how it might have ended up in her possession. Mr. Indigo ordered Coralia to come to the staff room immediately for a serious discussion about the theft. However, Milo quickly grabbed her shaking hand and pulled her outside before she could be questioned further. Coralia asked Milo in confusion why she had to run away when she wanted to go back inside and clear up the misunderstanding properly. But since Coralia couldn't remember anything concrete to defend herself with, Milo didn't want her to become the subject of malicious gossip throughout the entire school. At that crucial moment, Sierra was giving her detailed account to Mr. Indigo in the staff room. She claimed that Coralia had systematically forced her to hand over money for Coralia's personal expenses, threatening to physically assault her if she didn't comply with the demands. Since Sierra claimed she had no money left to give, she said she had been forced to take her mother's precious jewelry to use as collateral for Coralia's spending habits. However, because Coralia had completely lost her memory, Mr. Indigo felt obligated to call both sets of parents to discuss this serious matter. But Sierra adamantly refused to involve their families in the investigation. Meanwhile, Coralia watched through the classroom window as Sierra's mother arrived at the school in obvious fury, demanding immediate answers. Coralia turned to her two closest friends, Milo and Laurel, and asked them directly about her past relationship with Sierra, questioning whether she had really been bullying and extorting money from the girl before her accident. Her close friend Laurel denied the accusations completely and emphatically. Still filled with nagging doubts about her own character, Coralia was desperately eager to get more detailed information directly from Sierra herself. But every time she tried calling Sierra's phone number, the calls went straight to an automated voicemail message. The following morning, Coralia and Milo met up again for their daily exercise routine around the neighborhood park. While taking a rest break on a wooden bench, Milo noticed with alarm that the distinctive mark on Coralia's neck had mysteriously vanished without leaving any trace whatsoever. But when he mentioned this strange observation, Coralia had absolutely no memory of ever having such an injury. When she arrived at school that day, she overheard some classmates gossiping in hushed whispers about her alleged criminal behavior. She began to seriously wonder what kind of person she had really been before losing her memories. Feeling utterly dejected and confused about her own identity, Coralia went up to the school rooftop for some privacy and quiet reflection. There she unexpectedly ran into Jasper, who had been avoiding her since the locker incident. From their awkward conversation, she learned that he was actually the one who had broken her locker door many months ago during a previous incident. She had apparently yelled at him quite harshly at the time, and that brief confrontation was the only direct interaction they had ever shared. Meanwhile, the school administration was conducting a thorough investigation into the theft of Sierra's mother's expensive necklace. From analyzing various students' spending accounts and social media posts, they discovered that whenever their group went out together, Sierra was consistently the one paying for everyone's meals and entertainment. She occasionally even bought generous gifts for other members of their friend group. However, Coralia was notably the only person who never accepted anything from Sierra's generosity and never invited Sierra to join their social activities. Because of this suspicious pattern, some observant classmates began to speculate that Coralia had been systematically extorting money from Sierra and was now conveniently pretending to have lost her memory to avoid consequences. Laurel, upon hearing these malicious rumors spreading through the school, immediately confronted the gossiping students and defended her friend's character. For some inexplicable reason, witnessing this scene of friendship triggered a strange, fragmented memory in Coralia's confused mind. A vivid memory of someone who looked exactly like her being brutally bullied by a group of cruel students. Could it possibly be that Coralia was actually Bethany, the girl from the orphanage? When she returned home that evening, Coralia tried desperately to hide what had happened at school, but she ultimately couldn't keep the disturbing events from her worried mother. Mrs. Beaufort asked gently why her daughter hadn't confided in her about these serious problems. Coralia replied honestly that since she couldn't remember her past actions, she was genuinely afraid that if she had actually committed theft, it would deeply disappoint the mother who had shown her such unconditional love. Comforted by her mother's reassuring words and unwavering support, Coralia began to trust and believe that she truly hadn't bullied or stolen from Sierra. The next day at school, Laurel noticed that someone had secretly placed white lilies on Coralia's desk, flowers traditionally associated with death and mourning in their culture. After conducting some discreet investigation around the school, Laurel discovered that Sierra was the one responsible for this ominous message. So Laurel and Milo pulled Sierra aside for a serious confrontation about her increasingly strange behavior. Laurel directly asked Sierra why she had placed funeral flowers on Coralia's desk and demanded to know what she had actually done to Coralia's personal locker before the memory loss incident. Sierra vehemently denied any involvement in either situation, claiming complete innocence. Coralia's loyal friends then asked if Sierra had deliberately lied to the mentor about them forcing her to pay for their singing session, something they had never actually done to her. But Sierra claimed they had consistently treated her as if she were completely invisible, dragging her along to social events solely to pay all their bills without any genuine friendship. Sierra admitted that she had desperately wanted to hang out with them as a real friend rather than just a source of funding. She explained that she hadn't wanted the school administration to launch a full investigation because she was afraid they would discover she had no real friends whatsoever, only people who used her for money. But now she had completely changed her mind about protecting them. Sierra told Coralia's friends to prepare themselves for serious punishment when the truth finally came to light. That evening, Coralia caught Sierra sneaking around her locker area after school hours. She voiced her growing suspicion that perhaps the two of them had somehow swapped lockers before the mountain picnic incident. Unable to maintain her lies any longer, Sierra finally confessed the truth with tears streaming down her face. She admitted that she was intensely jealous of everything Coralia possessed: her beauty, her confidence, her natural leadership abilities, and the genuine friendships she had cultivated. Sierra had wanted Coralia to experience the same crushing misery and loneliness that she herself had endured for years. When something truly sad and overwhelming happens, everyone needs a safe place to process their emotions and let everything out. Coralia was no different from anyone else in this basic human need. She sought out Milo to pour her heart out about the devastating revelations and her confusion about her own identity. While they were playfully splashing water at each other by the school fountain, trying to lighten the heavy mood, Coralia suddenly slipped on the wet pavement and fell directly into the deep, ornamental pool. As she struggled desperately in the cool water, unable to swim properly, her completely lost memories suddenly came flooding back like a broken dam. It turned out that, unable to endure the relentless cruelty of the group led by Priscilla any longer, she had actually jumped into the raging river that ran behind the children's home, intending to escape this world permanently. But miraculously, the person who had saved her life looked eerily similar to her own reflection. In truth, she was Bethany, the bullied girl from Dewdrop Orphanage, and the person who had rescued her from certain death was her identical twin sister, Coralia. The comfortable life Bethany was living now was actually the life that the real Coralia had left behind when she disappeared. Everything Bethany had experienced, the loving mother, the beautiful home, the educational opportunities, all of it rightfully belonged to her sister. Stunned by these overwhelming recovered memories, Bethany stumbled home in a complete daze, unsure whether those vivid recollections were real experiences or just elaborate fantasies created by her traumatized mind. She frantically searched through Coralia's personal belongings until she found a hidden diary tucked away in the back of a desk drawer. Upon reading the diary entries carefully, Bethany confirmed with absolute certainty that those memories were indeed the complete truth. She was Bethany, the girl who had grown up in the harsh environment of an orphanage, not Coralia, the privileged daughter of a wealthy family. But thanks to losing her memory and accidentally switching lives, Bethany had finally come to know the incredible happiness of having a truly loving mother figure in her life. She hugged Mrs. Beaufort tightly, surprising the woman greatly with the sudden display of intense affection. The next day, Bethany confessed the entire complicated truth to Mr. Indigo in his private office. She carefully explained that she and Sierra had indeed swapped lockers before the mountain trip, but Mr. Indigo's sudden arrival during their secret meeting had left Sierra unsure of what to do next. Sierra had planned to stand before the disciplinary committee and confess everything during the formal hearing about the theft of her mother's necklace. But just as Sierra stepped forward to admit her guilt publicly, Bethany, still posing as Coralia, took full responsibility for bullying and extorting money from Sierra, even though she hadn't actually committed those crimes. Having once been a victim of systematic school violence herself, Bethany understood completely the deep fear and crushing loneliness that filled Sierra's heart every single day. This revelation left Sierra stunned and deeply grateful for Bethany's unexpected sacrifice. Bethany even sent Sierra some healing poems and encouraging messages, telling her not to be afraid anymore. Bethany assured Sierra that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be or how dark the sky appeared, Bethany would always be there by her side as a true friend. Sierra's emotions completely overflowed upon reading these kind words. Perhaps only now had she finally found someone who genuinely cared about her well-being, rather than just using her generosity. Everything was resolved in the most positive and healing way possible for all involved. However, Sierra still chose to leave the school quietly, rather than face the continued awkwardness of the situation. She didn't forget to create hand-drawn pictures for all her classmates, serving both as a heartfelt farewell and a sincere thank you for being part of each other's shared youth experience. 25,973 characters.